Morning. Well, it looks like there is overnight the United States sent in special forces to capture Nicholas Manduro of Venezuela, and uh, apparently they captured him and his wife, and are apparently en route to bring him to the United States for trial as a narco terrorist. Who knows what ultimately the charges will be, but that in essence is the justification for the action. And there's, you got people around the world, especially on the moral liberal side of it, saying, "Oh, goes against international rules and so forth," which uh, I disagree with with the aspect that there's some kind of sancto-sanct rule out there that says you can't defend your people and your nation. I mean, if that's the case, then the rules are wrong and should be changed. I think most Americans feel like the amount of drugs and actions from foreign actors within the Western Hemisphere is, a danger to the American people. When you've got China and Russia and others who are uh, sending drugs and various chemicals to make drugs to Venezuela and Colombia and other nations, and then those are being smuggled through Mexico into the United States, and roughly hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Americans have died from this, more than you would say in all the wars combined, probably that the United States has fought. Then I think there is a moral obligation on the leaders of this country to act, and that's by Christian perspective. And how do I get that? Well, we'll look at Romans chapter 13. It's well known, but it's one that I think is very important to reiterate in a time in which you see these kind of actions, and the president's getting ready to speak. So I want to catch this real quick. So
Hey, thank you very much.
let's
This is
see.
big stuff.
Hopefully you can hear this.
Appreciate you being here.
I'll turn it up just a little bit.
Late last night and early today, at my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault, and it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicholas Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history. And if you think about it, there's some other good ones like the attack on Soleimani, the attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and decimation of the Iran nuclear sites just recently in an operation known as Midnight Hammer, all perfectly executed and done. No nation in the world could achieve what America achieved yesterday, or frankly, in just a short period of time. All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark and it was deadly. But captured along with his wife, Celia Flores, both of whom now face American justice. Maduro and Flores have been indicted in the Southern District of New York, Jay Clayton, for their campaign of deadly narco-terrorism against the United States and its citizens. I want to thank the men and women of our military who achieved such an extraordinary success overnight with breathtaking speed, power, precision, and competence. You rarely see anything like it. You've seen some raids in this country that didn't go so well. They were an embarrassment. If you look back to Afghanistan, or if you look back to the Jimmy Carter days, they were different days. We're a respected country again, maybe like never before. These highly trained warriors operating in collaboration with U.S. law enforcement caught them in a very ready position. They were waiting for us. They knew we had many ships out in the sea, just sort of waiting. They knew we were coming. So they were in what's called a ready position. But they were completely overwhelmed and very quickly incapacitated.
Okay. Well, nothing new there, other than the fact that they captured it through a military operation, and Venezuela's Nicholas Manduro was captured, him and his wife, and they're going to be supposedly be held until tried, similar to Noriega in Panama when they did that invasion. And this one seemed to go off without a hitch. We haven't had any reports of American casualties or Venezuela casualties as well. We don't want anyone to die, but a government has an obligation to its people to protect its people. And if you're not doing that, if a leadership is not doing it, and then they're hiding behind rules of international law or something like that, well, then you're a worthless leader. If you can't protect your own citizens and you're saying, well, we can't act because of international law, like Stammer in the UK is basically saying, well, we believe in international law. International law is broken then, just like any other law. If you're letting criminals out of jail, then the law is broken and it needs to be changed. You're the lawmakers. And if you're the lawmakers, who do we hold who's held accountable? You're the lawmakers, and you're creating laws to hurt your own citizens or not protect your own citizens. Then you're worthless as a leader and you don't need you. And that's where people need to rise up and say, wait a minute, if you're the leader who's making the rules, making the laws, and you're not protecting your own citizens because you're hiding behind those laws, or you're letting criminals out early, or you're because of a bond agency or whatever else that's going on, then those rules are broken. And the citizens don't need you. You become worthless. You become expendable person who no one needs. You're not protecting, you're not doing the essence of your job. The central aspect of your job is to protect your citizens in your nation. And if you're not doing that, then you are somebody who's worthless. You're not of any value to your people. The most important thing you can do is protect your citizens and protect your nation. If you hide behind international laws or whatever laws that says you can't act, well, then those laws are need to be changed. Those laws are illegal, really. Your job as a leader is to protect your citizens and your nation. And that's the problem with globalism. That's the problem when you're unable to act to protect your own people of your own nation because of some rules in some kind of globalistic mindset. And that's the reason why you see the European leaders flailing. That's why you see the UK leaders flailing, because they have this ideal that they're just incapable of doing anything for their own citizens because someone in the international realm is going to be upset about it. Well, those international people aren't taking care of your citizens, and those international people don't hold to the values of your own nation that it was founded upon. Many of them have no values. All they want to do is protect themselves and their families and become more wealthy and more rich at the expense of everybody else. Let's bring in all these people with open borders so we can have cheap labor. Let's outsource our businesses to cheap labor around the world, even though it unemploys your own citizens. Let's build robots so that they won't have jobs. It doesn't matter. As long as I have another $10 billion in my bank account, that's all that matters, because I want to be the wealthiest man in the world. Well, those kind of people are dangerous people in your country. It doesn't matter how innovative they supposedly are. If they're doing that to your nation, then they should be removed. They should be like, you become worthless to your own people. Why allow them to even live in your nation at that point? Why are they, enjoying the benefits of living in a free society while they take advantage and destroy the free society they're living in? They're worse than a leash. They're worse than, they're a parasite in essence that needs to be removed, deported out of the country, and their wealth confiscated at that point then because of what they've stolen from the people. And the same thing for those who are in the drug trade. Or you find out that various leaders in the West who have been, getting money in some ways to their election campaigns. Well, they should be held accountable. So we'll jump into Romans real quick, like I was getting ready to. But I think there's an obligation on the side of all leaders to act, and I think God established that all the way back in Genesis. But we'll look at Romans first. Romans chapter 13. It's well known, but it's important to this. For it goes on to say that for rulers are verses 3 and 4. It says, for rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For if a minister of God to you, for it is a minister of God to you for good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword for nothing, for it is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil. Therefore, it is necessary to be in subjugation, not only because of wrath, but also for conscience sake. So, as a leader, they have the obligation to protect the citizens, and they have the authority to act with the sword, to use military force, to use judicial force. That includes the death penalty. If you are committing violent acts, you should be tried and executed. You should be imprisoned, and or whatever else needs to be done. And that goes on an international level as well. If a nation state is become rogue, or it's been taken over by bad elements who are doing nefarious things like running drugs or the chemicals to make the drugs, and doing things that are hurting other people, and dumping your citizens who are prisoners, convicts, mentally ill, these kind of people into another nation, similar to what Cuba did in the boat crisis. Similar thing here with the amount of people that were coming across the border under Biden, and they know that many of them were hard criminals, gang members, mentally ill, violent offenders, things like that. Well, if you allow those people and you purposely do that and you empty your jails to send those to another nation, yeah, that's a criminal. A country has a right to act and must act. It has a moral obligation to act. If you are supporting drugs, which is killing millions of people, then a country has a moral obligation to act. And when I hear, oh, this Democratic senator or this Republican senator or whatever, our representative doesn't like getting involved in this war and blah, 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 you have to ask, okay, it's okay for them to kill your citizens? Is it okay for them to poison your citizens? I mean, you seriously have a problem justifying the fact of doing nothing. Because if that's the case, you really shouldn't be in office. The reason why you're elected is to make those hard decisions that need to be made, even when no one wants war. No one in his right mind should want war. It's an act that should be the last resort. But it has to happen when you have leaders who are in places that are hurting its own citizens, and or more importantly, the citizens of the nation you're elected to protect. So when I hear about people like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Tucker Carlson or somebody like that saying, well, we don't want to be involved in any kind of war, this hyper libertarian type of ideal or worldview, I understand what they're saying, but you have to understand there has to be an act of protection for your citizens, and you can't be afraid to use that force if needed. And when they say, well, it's all about oil, it's this, that may be a part of it. Who knows? That part, I hope not. Hope that's not the case. But I certainly know the aspects of the drugs, the fentanyl that's killing millions of Americans. I absolutely know that for sure. I know that you look around the cities that have been inundated by drugs, and you see people that are like Philadelphia and Chicago and others that are just being inundated by drugs. And well, okay, somebody's behind all that. Clearly, there's an aspect of evil and evil intentions and actors behind it. And you're going to tell me that the most sophisticated, powerful nations in the world, who spends hundreds of billions of dollars on intelligence and satellites and everything else, they don't know where these drugs are coming from. They don't know where the chemicals are originating from. And under international law, you can't act, well, then the law is broken and needs to be changed. Then the international order needs to be changed because you have to protect your citizens, and stopping the flow of illegal narcotics and drugs that are destroying your cities, and this crazy ideology that has been spread through these universities, which has received billions of dollars from China to promote this socialistic, communistic ideology, while also the hatred of American and its own citizens, and also this whole anti-Israeli, anti-Christian, anti-American heritage ideology is evil and should be stopped. And if there's leaders that are promoting it or protecting it, they should be removed from office. And they have an obligation to protect its citizens. It goes back to Genesis. From the very beginning, when you had the Tower of Babel, you had the people that were speaking one language, it says in chapter 11. It just says, now the whole earth used the same language and the same words. I won't read the whole thing, but it goes on to say in verse 5, 6, and on, it says, the Lord came down to see the city of the tower, which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, behold, they are one people, and they all have the same language. And this is what they began to do. In essence, they built this tower, and this tower was to, in essence, make themselves lofty or lifted up to heavens without, acknowledging God, without reaching out to God. They were, in essence, trying to make themselves as God. And this leader of them was trying to, in essence, control, manipulate all of mankind as one people, which was not good. You don't want a tyrant running your show. You don't want a tyrant doing evil. And this here is a demonstration of what God chose to do. And he says, in verse 7, he says, come, let us go down and confuse their language so that they will not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of the whole earth, and he stopped building the city. Therefore, its name was called Babel. And today we still use that terminology, to babble, to speak foolishness or whatever, incoherent language. And he says, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of the whole earth. And in that, you have what we would call nation states, in essence, being established, because the people dispersed according to their language. They could understand each other, and that's where they went, and they became these groups of people, and these groups of people became nation states, city states, and then nation states. And we've been slowly trying to reverse the Babel effect, as it were, and have everybody come back and to this globalistic ideal. The ideal of globalism is not good. The ideal of globalism is that you have these unelected bureaucrats somewhere in the world ruling over other nations, and that's what the whole international rules order is all about, it seems like. It's not about rules. It's not about doing what's right. It's about maintaining some kind of globalistic control over other nations, especially smaller nations. And those smaller nations, basically have to, in essence, be vassal states of the bigger states, and the bigger states get to rule everybody. And they want it to be like, okay, well, we want that centered in England. We want it centered in, Dubai. We want it centered in Europe. And that's the Europeans seem to support this whole globalistic world order. It seems like, well, Europeans they can't run their own country. They don't look after their own citizens. The average European life style has decreased dramatically. I mean, they can't run their own countries. They're destroying their own countries and own people. I mean, you look what they're doing to the farmers. Look what they're doing to the metal workers. Look at what they're doing to the people who live in Europe and in England. I mean, they're not happy people. They're bringing in crazy people into their own countries and destroying rape is off the chart. Violence is off the chart. Drugs off the charts now. Europe used to be one of the most beautiful cultures in the world when they embraced their Judeo-Christian heritage. And now they're saying, oh, that's wrong heritage. That's racism or that's bigotry. No, it's not. That's your heritage. It's not bigotry to appreciate your heritage and what you believe, and as a society that made you great. Europe and England and so forth was the envy of the world. And now it's the laughingstock of the world, because you've destroyed your own culture for this crazy ideology of secular humanism, denying the reality of a God, a creator, and a loving God who established this beautiful thing called Christianity and used to spread this around the world through these great leaders and great teachers and preachers. And you transformed the world in so many ways, inspired the world to a higher state of seeking after a greater moral state. Instead, now you've got this crazy secular humanist philosophy that everything goes and no one can say nothing, and anyone who does is a bigot and a racist and so forth. No, that's not true. It's, having the beauty of Christianity is the envy of the world. And that was what established. And the fact that people deny that, reject it because they've been indoctrinated in secular humanism, they don't even know their own history, their own heritage. You're a fool to believe these idiots. These are the people destroying your country. Why would you believe their secular humanist reasoning and craziness, which is what they've promoted around the freaking world, and it's destroying your own countries and your own cities and your own families. You look at every family that's embraced this crazy, irrational, secular humanist philosophy. Those families in general are destructive, self-centered, and they are just dysfunctional in so many ways. You see the opposite of that in most Christian families that are still embracing the identity of their heritage and the culture and the truth of the Scripture. And when the world looks at that, they mock them, make fun of them, but they're the ones that are working. Why is that? What went from the most beautiful of societies to now this crazy insanity that they've embraced? Also, that you can do what you want, when you want, and how you want. And in essence, it's Satanism. Do what they will is the whole of the law. That's the insanity of Satanism, in essence. Well, if you do whatever you want and everybody does that, then yeah, you don't have any rules-based order. The only rule is, hey, don't tell me to do anything. That's the establishment. I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want. Well, you got anarchy. That's what you have. Well, anarchy is not a functional society. And in fact, the government ultimately has to step in because it's going to become more lawless, and that's what we've seen. And the more humanistic a society becomes, the more lawless it becomes, the more authoritarian it must come. Because you don't have a self-governing society that's regulated by an internal moral compass through the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, who tells you through your conscience that this is the right way to live, to love others, be respectful of others, be kind, be generous, be helpful, be thoughtful, to do what's right. Not because somebody's watching you, but because it's right to do, because you know it's pleasing to God. You have to have a self-governing society if you want to have a free society. If you want a lawless society, if you want to have an anarchy society, if you want to have a dysfunctional society, yeah, you're going to embrace secular humanism, which is do whatever you want, however you want, whenever you want. And they'll say, oh, if you don't hurt anybody. Well, that's very narcissistic way of living your life, because the only thing that matters to you is that you get more than the next guy. You get to live your life however you want, doesn't matter what, as long as it's pleasurable to you. It's a nihilism. And nihilism ultimately leads to a dysfunctional, destructive society. We've seen it over and over again. Nietzsche's own family was dysfunctional. He was dysfunctional. His son, as I remember, was committed suicide. It was just a terrible society, a terrible way to live your life, and it's been destructive throughout Europe and the world and America. I mean, you look at Canada, America, all these places, beautiful societies, wonderful centers of education and so forth. As they've embraced this crazy secular humanist philosophy and worldview of globalism, they become less governed, less governable, less free, less everything, less sane. As you look at the societies, they become insane. You got people who are stealing left, right, center. You got thieves running around, breaking in mobs, going and stealing. Why? Because they don't have a self-governing moral compass to show them that they're wrong, because they've lost their way of saying, yes, there is a loving God who created you and you're accountable to him. When you have an ungovernable people, what do you have to have? You have to have a more totalitarian and dictatorial, authoritarian type of government to pass laws on every aspect of your life. You eventually have to have a law saying you can't spit. Well, everybody knows you shouldn't be spitting around. You can't, not to steal. Well, okay, well, we'll have to toughen up the laws on them and make them, we'll put them in jail for 25 years instead of 10 years. I mean, you just have to have a more authoritarian government that's more dictatorial, more oppressive. That's what happens when you have an ungovernable free society. You have to have a society that is moral, self-governing. I don't steal because I know it's wrong and it's not pleasing to God. It's not pleasing to the Creator who made me. And I don't hurt other people because it's not pleasing to God. I need to love other people. I need to be kind to other people. I need to be generous to other people. I need to be supportive of other people. I need to help other people. I need to look out for the benefit of other people, not just myself. I don't steal their car simply because the keys are in it. I don't walk in people's house because the door's unlocked. I don't steal from my employer simply because he's not watching me. I don't cheat on my time card. I don't cheat on my spouse because there's a beautiful woman next door I can take advantage of. Or a woman doing the same thing with a man. I mean, these are the things that as a society we need to say, wait a minute, we need to have a functional, moral, self-governing society, which means you have to reject the insanity of secular humanism, reject this secular ideology and globalism, and get back to the nation states, self-governing, founded upon the heritage and the truth of the Bible and Judeo-Christian values and the truth of Christianity. That has to be embraced again. If not, what we will see is globalism slowly creeping into every aspect of our lives, and in that secularism and the ideology that goes along with it, and which will ultimately be destructive to your cities, towns, villages, and everything else. And we've seen it. It's not like I have to prove it. Simply look around. The more we've embraced the insanity of those ideologies, the more destructive it's been. And so when people criticize Trump, and there's things you can criticize him for, but one of them is I don't criticize him for is if you act to stop the evil that are happening in the world, then how can you criticize him for that if he's trying to protect the citizens? So I think he has a moral obligation. I think everyone in Congress, Senate and on, have an obligation to support the stopping of those who are running drugs into our cities and towns and villages, and those who are working to subvert our campuses and our universities and our children through the education system, which is needs to be revamped. It completely needs to be redone. And you got people on the Democratic side who control the education system, and they're fully on board with the insanity that's been going on for many decades of indoctrinating the children into the second humanist philosophy of craziness. And it's been totally destructive to the society. Simply look at the society. Turn on an average movie, and what you see is the F word bounced around every 35 times. Why do you need the FCC if they don't ever govern or hold anybody accountable for the filth that's put and propagated in front of the minds and hearts of the people? If you have movies that are anti-American being sent out among the masses to indoctrinate them to hate their own country, you see them promoting mocking Christianity, your own heritage, which is founded upon your fathers, your grandfathers, your great-great-grandfathers who lived and died for that heritage or truth. Here they are mocking it and indoctrinating the masses to have bigotry towards Christians and towards Christianity. And you got the FCC who does absolutely nothing about that. Why do you need that organization? If they don't stop the filth and the craziness, then why do we need it? It should be stopped. It should be, why is it left to be propagated around the world? Start finding those who promote filth. And they can't hide behind free speech. Free speech does not allow you to indoctrinate your own people and destroy your own people through filth. If it is, then the law needs to be changed. You're the lawmakers. Change it. No one says that you're allowed to do that or should be allowed to do that just simply because it's free speech. Free speech does not give you carte blanche ability to destroy your own society and be against your own society. I think you have a moral obligation as leaders to stop the propagation of evil in your land. And if you don't, then you're an illegitimate leader who should not be in power and should be removed. Anyway, so when people get on there and they start talking about all this international law and that Trump's wrong for going into Venezuela and blah, 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 I just strongly disagree, and that's my Christian take on it, that we as Christians have to support those who demand for them. We don't trust in them, we trust in Jesus Christ, but we have to demand that those leaders act decisively to stop the flow of evil in the land. And that if we're not going to support that, then what are we supporting? And God is the one who put them into power, and they are to use that power to protect its citizens and its nation from evil. And the problem is we haven't supported that. Instead, we said, hey, let's be a voting bloc for the Republican Party. Well, that doesn't work, and that shouldn't be working. We should be trusting exclusively in Jesus Christ, yes, but we should expect leaders to act on the behalf of all Americans and others to protect them from the evils that are happening and occurring that we see. And nothing like that is happening. Instead, we have these people who are embracing every form of depravity there is, and even saying it's okay in the church itself, which is crazy. We need to call it out for what it is, and it's wrong. If you're promoting, insanity of evil and perversion, then it needs to be called out by Christians saying, no, we don't tolerate it, we don't like that, we don't support that, and we need leaders to stand up strongly and say, no, we won't. We won't support the depravity and evil in the land simply because you think it's morally that you think it's politically correct to say otherwise, and no one has a right to say that something is wrong. No, you can clearly say that things aren't beneficial or good for society, and that therefore makes it wrong. Anyway, that's my 2 cent rant.